Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the specific training pathway training today. So today you have your supervisor joining us virtually due to the border restrictions, and she will give us any advice when possible or necessary. Otherwise, you will be just joining as a guest. And we will run the training. In this training, we have two topics. The first topic is understanding early year learning framework, which I already print off a hard copy for you, or I will also display it on the computer for your reference. And the second topic is how to write an observation for young children, assessing children's learning. I also prepare two observation example for you to understand how to write an observation in an easier way, and a template for you to do practice. And I believe that at the end, I also have an assessment booklet, which I will explain for you later. Yep. Any questions before we start our training?
Not yet.
Not yet. Any question from your side, Ting Ting?
I'm all good, yeah, thank you.
Great, awesome. So if you please have a look at the first presentation, our first sessions, Understanding Early Years Learning Framework. So, before we started, I wanted to ask, what is Early Year Learning Framework?
Well, it's in here. Can I read?
Yes, you can read the content.
It's a set of standards, practice and principles to guide early childhood workers with the education and development of children between the age of 0 to 5 years old.
Yep, so yeah, that's right. So it's take out information from the early year learning framework. So basically what it means is early year learning framework. It's a foundation, it's a reference document for early childhood educators and teachers to do planning and access children's learning. So the focus of the early year learning framework is play-based learning, so children learn through play, and also the importance of communication skills and social and emotional development of children. So that's pretty much the core of early year learning framework. So in early year learning framework, Ting Ting, do you know how many outcomes in the early year learning framework?
I guess that would be 4, but could you please explain a bit more about that?
Yes, so the early year learning framework has 5 learning outcomes. So all the outcomes are focusing on children's, again, first is the identity for outcome 1, and outcome 2 is children's sense of community. Outcome 3 is children's social and emotional well-being. Outcome 4 is their learning skills. Outcome 5 is their communication skills. So let's go through it one by one. So you have unpacking your understanding of the early year learning framework. So if you look at the second slide, so you can see it on the computer. So outcome 1 is children have a strong sense of identity. So it's about children's identity. And under each outcome, it also has 4 sub-outcomes. So outcome 1, sub-outcome 1, children feel safe, secure and supported. And sub-outcome 2, children develop their emerging autonomy, interdependence, resilience and sense of agency. Sub-outcome 3, children develop knowledge, confidence, self-identities. And sub-outcome 4, children learn to interact in relation to others with care, empathy and respect. So by looking at the main outcome 1 and the 4 sub-outcomes, what do you think any learning areas that can link to outcome 1? Any thought?
Sorry, I don't actually.
Yeah, so just any learning areas that you think can link to outcome 1. So the outcome 1 is focusing on children have a strong sense of identity. So their identity. So what do you think? Is there any learning areas that you think can link to outcome 1. Any thought?
Sorry.
Feeling secure and supported perhaps is during the activities the kids are more able to play as a team and help other kids to probably in some other tasks as well.
Yes, you are on the right track, Jetting. So if you turn on the page 2, and you can see the learning areas that can link to outcome 1. So children's identity, so self-esteem. So you have, if they, are the children be able to celebrate their achievements or to share a special moment with the peers, so their friends and the educator, their self-identity, are they proud of their cultural backgrounds and they proud of where are they from, and the families as well. So that is the identity, self-esteem, and also the second learning area that can link to outcome 1 is the sense of belongings, like what Tintin says about the community, so the team, about the team, so that has to belong to the community, belong to a group of children, or belong to a group of the community in the center or outside the center. And also relationship with the educators. So that means how are the children feeling secure with the educators in their room? Are they feeling, when they're feeling sad or, when they have emotional needs, are they going to come approach you to get comfort from you? So that is about the relationship, positive relationship with the educator. So that's 3 areas. So children's identity, the sense of belonging, and also relationship with educators. Any questions so far?
No, that's explained very well.
Yeah.
I understand it.
Great.
Yeah.
So this area will help you to do the observation in the section 2. So you can use them as a reference in the future. And so now let's have a look of outcome 2. Yeah. So outcome 2. So that can Jenny, you read the main outcome for me?
Yeah, sure. So children are connected with and contribute to their work. So do I need to read all the details?
The sub-outcomes, the 4 sub-outcomes.
Children develop a sense of belonging to group and communities and understanding of the reciprocal rights and responsibilities necessary for active community participation. Children respond to diversity with respect. Children become aware of fairness. Children become socially responsible and show respect for the environment.
Great, thank you, Jenny. So by reading the main outcome 2 and also the 4 sub-outcomes, what do you think the learning areas that can be linked to outcome 2? Any thought? So it's about the connecting to the world. Yep. Any other thoughts? No?
Actually, I got a question.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I don't really understand the 2.4, the last second bit, show the respect for the environment. Like, I don't quite understand.
Environment, that means how children actually looking after the learning environment, how they're looking after the classroom, and also looking after the natural environment. So we sometimes, as an educator, we do have expectation for the children. So the children in the room, will they look after each learning station? Will they look after the plants, or having awareness that they need to actually look after the plants and they will grow, or if they go outside, they step around the bush and pulling leaves, that is not quite respecting the environment. So when we say respect for the environment, it's all about how children learn to look after the environments. That's including the learning environment and the outdoor environment. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, that makes sense now.
Cool. So, The learning area linked to the outcome 2 has 4 learning areas. One is the sense of community, so belong to a group. So how they together, they do an activity together, so that they connect to each other, they discuss their ideas, and they find a solution, so belong to a group. So it's a little bit different from outcome 1, because outcome 1 did say a sense of belonging, but it's a sense of belonging to a community. So it's, outcome 1 is more so belong to a culture, community, belong to a family, you know, that's the sense of belonging. So the outcome 2 here is a sense of community, belonging to a group, how they belong, you know, work together, you know. And the second learning area is a cultural diversities. So as you know, in Australia, it's very multicultural. So how children actually accepting other cultures, that is linking to area 2. So that demonstrates children's understanding of the world. So where they live, they actually, you know, not just Australian culture, obviously there's Aboriginal culture, and there's also Asian cultures and other European cultures in our community too. So it's all about culture and community, and also respectful relationships. So as we mentioned before about the environment, how children respect the environment and also respect their, you know, the relationship between the environment and themselves. And the last one is environmental awareness. So again, it's like what we mentioned before, how children actually aware of the setup of the environment, the indoor and outdoor, and how they actually put efforts into looking after this environment, treating the environment as their environment, the society that they live in. Yeah, any question?
So 2.3 and 2.4 are pretty similar, isn't it? But
3 and 2.4. And so 2.3 is children become aware of fairness. So we're talking about being fair.
So for me, my understanding, they're pretty similar, but 2.4, which the respectful relationship is more towards to people.
Yeah.
But the fourth one is more towards to the environment.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's very good understanding and thinking, Carissa. Well done. So yeah, it's about respectful relationship, again, fairness. So how they treat children like their friend, you know, fairly. How they how they being fair during play. You know, when children negotiating their roles, are they being fair when they are playing with toys? Are they sharing their resources, or they just, you know, or the children are feeling difficult to sharing or, you know, having a turn? So that's about a respectful relationship. Yep. So let's have a look of outcome 3. So outcome 3, Jetty, would you like to read out the outcome 3 for us?
Sure. So learning outcome 3, children have a strong sense of well-being. So sub outcome 3.1, children become strong in their social and emotional well-being. And 3.2, children take increasing responsibility for their own health and physical well-being.
Great. So there's only 2 sub-outcomes in the outcome 3, the main outcomes. By reading the contents of the outcome 3, what learning areas do you think that can be linked to the outcome 3? So I can give you a hint. So it's about their well-being. So the sub-outcome 1 has about social, emotional. And sub-outcome 2, it mentioned about health and physical. So what do you think the area that can link?
My understanding is I'm not quite sure it's correct.
That's okay.
So,
That's right.
Children are being able to say, tell the educator, say, I'm not feeling well, or someone pushed me, for example, and I feel hurt.
Yeah.
So they've been able to like tell
Yeah. So you're on the right track. Yeah, it's about they knowing their physical their physical feeling, their physical needs. Yeah. Any other thought?
I also feel like it's pretty correlated to like outcome 1 and 2 as well as what Teresa say, like the kids being able to, you know, express their feeling.
Yep.
So I do have understanding of that's correlated to outcome 1 because the kids know who they are and being able to connect with the educator, they develop like a sense of
Yep.
security, and that's why they are able to, you know, like express their feeling. And yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah. So you make a really good point, Jenny. In the earlier learning frameworks, the reason that we call it a framework is not a curriculum is because lots of children's learning are interlocking. So there's some of the things display outcome 1, but also display outcome 3. And in May, one of the activities they do, it may actually display all the 5 outcomes. That's why we have all the sub-outcomes to support you to identify what is the children's learning about. And we don't call it framework because it's a guideline for you. It's not a curriculum, it's a framework to guide us to plan a program and assess children's learning based on what children do. So there will be similarity as we go through all the outcomes because they are pretty much interlocking. And sometimes we actually, like all educators in the industry, feel very difficult to just identify one single learning outcome for a child's observations or identify one learning outcome on a program because one activity may involve 2 or 3 of the learning outcomes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. So by the outcome 3 learning areas that can link to is pretty much about their physical development. So their gross motor skills and their fine motor skills. So when you look at sub-outcome 1, children have a strong sense in the sub-outcome 2. Children take increasing responsibility for their own health and physical well-being. So the key words here is the health and the physical. So it's about children's physical skills, gross motor skills and fine motor skills. So gross motor, we refer to the big movements. Can children walk, run, jump, balance on their age stage? You know, it's a different level. Can children, fine motor, that refer to the very fine muscles. So how children manipulate a pair of scissors, scissor skills, how they manipulate a pen, so how they hold a pencil, the pencil grip skills, hold the pencil to draw or write, and how to manipulate some of the art tools such as paintbrushes and sponges, so that involve their fine motor skills. So Ting, you were previously from a health industry, so you will know about all these, you know, fine motor and gross motor. You probably have a better understanding. So it's all about the fine muscles. That is called a fine motor. So how they actually handle some small tools, or even gluing and sticking, how they manipulate, holding, controlling the glue stick, and do the sticking with the little fingertips. So that's all the fine motor skills. So that's children's physical development. Then when we go back to outcome 1, it's about the keywords. You can see it's social and emotional. So it's children's emotional skills and social skills. So by saying emotional skills and social skills, do you have any idea about what is emotional skills?
I'm not quite sure. Emotional skills, like if that means the children, I don't know, maybe they should control their emotional or how to express their emotions.
Yes, that is one area. Well done, Jenny. So emotional skills is how children, like what Jenny says, identify their emotions. So I feel very sad, or I feel very, you know, tired, and, you know, I want to cry. So they will be able to understand how they feel, the inner emotions, how they feel. Or I'm feeling very angry because someone just took my toys, or someone just threw sand at me when I was in the sand pit. So that's emotional skill, how to understand the emotion. And the other thing about social emotional skill is how children regulate their emotions. So for example, just take us adult as an example, you know, when you're feeling angry, what do you do?
Well, when I feel angry, I will give myself 5 seconds time. I just calm down. Just don't say anything. Don't do anything. Just think.
Yeah.
Maybe after 5 seconds, I will be fine. I won't say something hurt people.
That's really good. That's really good. And anyone want to share their, you know, what they do? What would they do usually when they're feeling angry?
Yeah, just like what Jenny said, I think being an adult, we are more responsibility to ourselves and also our surrounding as well. And so we will give us a time to calm down before we act.
Yeah.
Or maybe we have a short reflection of what previous experience is, and then that potentially influence what we're going to do next.
Yeah.
So as an adult, we need some time to think and just before we act.
Yeah, right. And Carissa, would you like to share?
Well, I would say yes, I agree with Jenny and Tintin.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, as an adult, we need to calm down before we say anything or do anything to hurt the people around us.
Yeah.
But when I when I was maybe younger, when I'm angry or just say anything, do anything, probably would hurt people.
Yeah.
And I believe that probably as a young learners, like 0 to 5 years old, they wouldn't know how to control their emotions.
Yeah. So what you share, all of you share, that is right. So about emotional skills. So the reason I asked you what do you usually do when you're angry is what you do when you're feeling angry is actually a strategy that you regulate your anger, so that it doesn't go, go any further, your anger, like when you say you're going to hurt someone or, things like that. So you are actually applying your own personal emotional regulation skills to regulate your anger, to help you to calm down, to make you being, sensible. So that is emotional regulation skills. So young children, yes, is like what Carissa mentioned, it's very challenging for young children to learn to regulate their emotion because they are only young. Imagine they only been in the world for 2 or 3 years. Their real life experience is not quite there to support them to regulate their emotion. But however, emotional regulation skills can start very early. When they're feeling angry, they start storming or rolling on the ground, crying. It's also a way for the young children to regulate their emotions because this is how they feel like they can make themselves calm down. But our job is to support them how to, develop even better social, emotional regulation skills to, go through that really yucky emotion stage. So that's emotional regulation skills. So anything that you apply, any strategies, anything you do that apply to impulse your emotions, to regulate your emotion, that is emotional regulation, right? So even though we're adults, some people just feel comfort food is a way to regulate their stress. So there's even food is their emotional regulation strategies, or drinking, that is emotional regulation strategies. But whether or not, it's effective or not, that is another perspective. But that's called the emotional regulations. So social skills. So as you may understand a bit more, what do you think social skills involve?
Like children, they have the skills to approach other kids, or share the experience, or to invite other kids to play with them. Like,
Very good.
Like what way adults do.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, now how our adults do. So social skill is more, it's about how children understanding the relationship with other people. What Jenny said, how to initiate play with their friends. And how they negotiate the roles in play, like when they're playing kitchen, you know, like I'm gonna be mom and you're gonna be dad, or you're gonna be the pet, you know. That's negotiating the roles. Or when they're having a conflict in play, how do they actually solve the problem? Are they going to push each other, or they're going to just negotiate and discuss and you know, or change the role? So that's the social skills. Any question?
No, this one's not that hard to understand.
Yeah, it just made me apply my own reflection when I was young, when I was playing with my sister. She actually, had the, play roles, negotiations as well. And yeah, that is actually very making sense,
Yeah, so that is a social skill. So generally speaking, children negotiating role is actually quite an advanced social skills for children under 5, because they need to actually plan the play. So it's like an adult, they need to plan the event. So they need to you know, this one need to do this, that one need to do that. So it's a sequence, it's like a story. So that's quite advanced role skills. It's quite advanced social skills for very young children. And so let's move on to outcome 4. And it's a bit long, so we're just going to read. Carissa, would you like to read just the main outcome?
Okay. Learning outcome 4, children are confident and involved learners.
Okay. So when we're reading the outcome 1, our main outcome 4, what do you think is the key word here?
I think it's the confidence.
Yeah, confidence. And any other words that you think can be the key word?
Involved.
Involved. Yeah. Anything else?
Learners.
Learners, yes. So confident, involved, and learners. So as you can see, like these 3 words, confident, involved, learner. So that means it's all about children's learning skills. How they learn, how they develop skills to learn and explore. So that you see on sub-outcome 1, so they develop disposition for learning. So again, it's learning skills, their dispositions for learning, such as curiosity, cooperation, confidence, creativity, commitment, enthusiastic, persistence, imagination, and reflexivity. So it's how children actually have the skills, disposition to initiate in learning. So it's about learning, and it's about outcome 2 again, how they use different skills, a range of skills to explore. So skills such as problem solving. So for example, when they're playing with a set of puzzles, the skills that apply will be problem solving, because they need to just work out which puzzles pieces goes with the other one, so they can put back together as a picture. So the problem solving skills. And also when they're doing counting, they need to work out, so if they see, for example, if they see a number 5, they need to work out how many, like if there's stones there, how many stones that they can put it onto the table to represent the number 5. So that is problem solving skills. Inquiry, so children actually being curious, asking questions, you know, that's how they learn. Inquiry, you know, inquiry from the educator and the peers. And also experiments, so do they actually try out some of the testing, you know, the hypothesis. Like, I know that it's a big word for young children, but you know, when they see, for example, they see a worm, or they think that I think the worm can swim. So that is a hypothesis for the young children. It's then what do they do when they make the hypothesis is that maybe they put the worms in the water to see if the worm's going to, you know, going to swim or going to die. So that is how the experiments and hypothesis then doing research, obviously, because they're actually putting a worm in the water and to find out if the worm can actually swim or if the worms just only live in the dirt. So investigating, so this is all the learning skills that children are developing as a learner. So they're learning skills again. So again, like from sub-outcome 2, like learning from one context to another, how they say, for example, they learn something about 5, the number 5. So there's 5 of the stones on the table. They said this is number 5. And if they go, when they're having a meal time, so when they're having lunch, will they apply this 5 to say that there's 5 balls on the table, so that it's applying from what they learn about 5 stone to a new context. So I can see 5 balls on the table, so at lunchtime. So then that means the children actually applying their understanding of number 5 into a new context at lunchtime. So that is what applying for one context to another. So from knowledge, from using one group of knowledge, applying to different area to support their understanding of the world. So sub-outcome 4 is children use different resources to support their learning. So their learning skills, how they actually connect to people. You know, sometimes a child comes to you, hey Jenny, can you tell educator, connecting with people to find out the answers. So they know, you know, they develop their skills, enrich their cognitive development. And technology, and obviously in this day we can't live without iPad, smart boards. So how children actually use the Google search to actually find out things instead of, you know, like playing games. So how they do it using technology, or how they actually use a camera to capture a moment for their learning. So that is technology, you know, and materials like rocks and all the learning resources are material to support their learning. Yeah. So, I've done lots of talking. So what do you think the learning areas that can be linked to outcome 4 about learning?
So quiet.
Learning areas. So it's about learning.
Learning skills.
Yep, learning skills.
And
Very
how
good.
to like to build a relationship with the educators.
Yep, the relationship, learning skills, and learning relationship with peers and educators. So how they actually connect with their educators and peers to their friends to actually learn and to enrich their learning. So their learning relationship with others and their learning skills, how they apply problem-solving skills, like I mentioned it before, experiment or hypothesis and imaginations. All these are learning skills, and how children learn, like their process, the whole process they learn through, they just go and digging, you know, the learning process. So all about children's curious about the learning environment and finding out the answer. That is outcome 4. That's a learning area, all about learning. So when you're doing observation, when children actually initiate in learning, that is always linked to outcome 4. Yeah.
I've actually got a question.
Yes.
Does that include the children have the ability to cooperate with the other people?
Yes. So then it does link it to there, because when you cooperate with other people, that's about the learning relationships. So connecting with the educators and peers, and they need to work together and, you know, to find out the answer. So that's a learning relationships. And you probably think that, I feels like that is linking to outcome 3. That is about the social skills. Yes, that's completely correct and completely fine. As I mentioned it before, all the 5 outcomes are interlocking, and they hardly can actually go very individual outcomes when we're doing observation and planning. Yeah. Any other questions? No. Jetty, you all good?
No, and so I think outcome 4 is more like focusing on like kids being able to ask questions and how to reflect on the questions and learning from the process. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. So when we're talking about all the learning, it's always linking to outcome 4. So when children learning number 5, so that is their learning. So they're trying to work out how many rocks. Yes. So they're asking questions. That is, they're using their learning skills to actually gain the understanding. Or they actually say, Jackie, can you actually show me what is number 5? So they are asking you a question. They want to connect it with you. That's scaffolding. They're having the adult scaffolding. So then you will support them to go up to the next level. So filling in the gap. So that is a learning. So it's scaffolding. So that's a learning relationship. So everything that you think involves about children's learning, it's always number 4, the outcome 4. And of course, when they connect it with adult, you can say that, oh, you know what, I think there's also developing social skill, which is in outcome 3, and that's also fine. Yeah. Anything else? Cool.
Very clear. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you. So let's go through the last outcomes, the outcome 5. So outcome 5 also have 5 sub-outcomes. So what Jetty, would you like to read out just the main outcome and pick out the keyword?
Learning outcome 5, children are effective communicators.
Yeah.
So I think the keyword here is like effective and communicator. It seems like it's focusing on interaction and communications.
That's correct. Very well done, Jetty. That was a really good answer. So the keyword is pretty much is the communicators. So communication about interactions. So when you look at sub-outcome 1, so how they actually interact verbally and non-verbally. So they use body language when they haven't developed that, you know, that vocabulary. So they're pointing, you know, they're pointing to an apple. So they might be meaning, I want an apple. So that is a way to communicate too. For the very young children, like when they are under 1 year old, they're usually just pointing. So that is a way to communicate. They're pointing things to you to tell you, look, I'm talking about that. So that's how they interact with the very young children, the babies. So obviously, as they get older, their language skills are a lot better. So then they can start using their verbal communication with you and say, hey, Carissa, I want a glass of water. So that is how they communicate, verbal and non-verbal. And also how they engage with a range of texts and gaining meaning. So when you're reading our story, you're pointing to the storyline, the storyline. So that is a way they started to understand, oh, okay, text is a way to communicate. So you know, they understand the text has meaning. And also expressing idea using a range of media. When we're talking about a range of media, not just the iPhone or iPad. So we're talking about they're using actually crayons, you know, different things, or pencils, texture. They actually draw on, they even use their finger to draw on the sandpit. That's different media. So they use different things to actually to communicate some idea or some thought, or sometimes even an event. So also symbols and patterns. So sometimes when you're clapping and they clap the same. So that is their understanding about the patterns, about sounds pattern. So it's also a way to communicate. So when a teacher or an educator, they try to get children's attention, they usually clap the patterns. Then the children will understand, oh, okay, that pattern means we need to stop doing what we are doing, we need to listen. So they are making sense of the pattern and some symbol, or, you know, if you make a red dot and say the red dot means you can't go. So that is the children understanding the symbol means we can't go. So, you know, that's how they, you know, how to, about the world, how you interact with the world, how to interact with the peers and educators. And also communicate, so representing their idea, so how they use information. So sometimes they draw a picture and maybe it just scribble, you know, just lots of scribble line. They just started to tell it, I went to the beach, blah, 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 blah. You know, I have an ice cream, the ice cream is pink, so that's why she used pink crayon to do a drawing. It's just scribble, but then the scribble is just because it's only demonstrate their developmental stage, that they haven't yet been able to draw a picture of the beach. But the paint is a representation of their thinking about the information that they want to give it to you. So they're actually describing an event by using the paint crayons, because that's the only thing he can, or she can, you know, use to demonstrate So in conclusion, the outcome 5 is always about interaction, like what Jetty mentioned, and communication. So any method children use to communicate is communication skills outcome 5. So by the explanation that I've given, what do you think learning areas I can link to outcome 5? Any thought?
I think it's like the verbal communication.
Yeah.
And also you said the children who is under 2 years old, maybe they use the body language.
Yes.
To trying to communicate.
Yeah.
And also I think it's observation skills. Like you said, sometimes when children learn or they're trying to communicate, maybe they will observe other people, educators.
Yeah.
Say how do they do it, and maybe they So I think it's observation skills.
Yeah.
Also like the learning skills.
Yes. So they observe and learning how to communicate. So that is a way. So it's all communication because they observe how other children or other people interact. Then that's how they communicate. So they're developing communication skills through observing other, or observing an event or observing 2 people interacting. Yeah. Any other thought? That was really good, Jenny. Well done.
I think it's connected to learning skill of verbal and non-verbal communication skills. So, for example, like how children express themselves by body language. Yeah. And also how the way seeking for help or asking questions, and in terms of non-verbal, they probably how the way they draw and probably some simple writing if they develop to that stage.
Yeah, that's right. So it's all writing skills. That's what Jyoti mentioned. So children's early writing skill, like as I mentioned it before, scribble. It might be a drawing. It might be a writing. It might be the child just pretending this is what I think writing is. So children's early writing skills. And also reading skills. So as I mentioned it, reading a story with you, understanding text, and using different methods like painting, drawing, craft, even cutting a few pieces, sticking on and telling you a story about something. That is a way they communicate because their writing skills are quite limited in their age. So it's anything they use, any method they use to communicate, it's about outcome 5 or communications. Yeah? That makes sense? Before we move on to the second sessions, is there any question about the 5 outcomes?
No, I think it's very clear for me.
Right. And Jetty, you're good?
Yep, very clear, thank you.
Thank you. And Carissa, you are?
Yes, it's pretty clear at this moment. Yep.
That's fantastic. Right. So let's move on to writing an observation for children. So observation, we use observation as a way to assess children's learning, like what we say. And that's the reason I mentioned it in the session 1, the topic 1, so session 1, what learning areas link to each outcome. Because when you're doing your observations, you actually observe what the child is doing, and then you need to interpret, so analyze that observation, what learning area actually link it to, what outcomes. The early year learning framework. So the early year learning framework again is our foundation. It's pretty much the most important documentations in early childhood education setting. And so what is the child observations? So child observation pretty much is you go and watch a child and you listen to what they say. Exactly what they say, and you document exactly what you see and what you hear. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic, exactly what you see and exactly what they say. So they say, for example, you saw a child playing in the sandpit and drawing circles in the sandpit. That's what you see and that's what you say. No any additional fancy words like he's drawing, he's drawing a ball. That is your interpretation, not the child. The child might be a circle, that might be a cake. So it's write exactly what you see, what you hear. So that's a child observation. So based on what you write and what you see, you then analyze what do you think this piece of information, like this observation telling you the child's development. Is that the child actually trying to be like the outcome 5 communication, like he's trying to communicate something with you by drawing circles in the sandpit, or was that he's trying to get someone else's attention, so that's the social skills, that's strategies that they want to do. So it's all about interpretation. When you analyze it, then you have the follow-up activity with the children. So I would like you to have a look of the template that I've given you. That is an observation template, it's an empty one. So I will open it for you. Jetting, would you, let me show you, I don't think we can. Let me see if I can show you.
I have the observation format here. You did send it to me. Thank you.
Yep, so I have the format. So when you look at the observation format, you will see. I think maybe I don't have one. That's one. There will be 5 sections. So you look at it. The section 1. So that empty one, that's the template. So Carissa, you're right, that is the template.
Yeah.
So section 1, I'll just use the example for now. So section 1 is, you can see about the, just use the template, the observations, template. I think I just, here we go, I got that. So this is the observation template, it's empty, it's literally just a template to help you to fill in the sessions. So that helps you to understand what to do in the observation. So the first session is pretty much the information of the child. Day of the observation, so what day did you observe? Because children's learning always different. You know, like you observe in November and December, it might be completely different because the child keep developing every day. So you need to record the observation day, the child's name, obviously who you're observing, and also child's day of birth. So that it has given you the reference what developmental state the child is at. So then in session 1 here, observation. So what did you remember what I mentioned about what do you write on here?
What the children did. Don't use fancy words. Just,
Correct. So very plain language, exactly what you see, what you hear. So then the session at the middle here is called the interpretation. So that is the session you analyze these piece of observations. Then the early learning outcome, which we just discussed before. So what is this interpretation linked to? Is that linking to the communication skill, which is outcome 5, or is that linking to the social skill, which is outcome 3? All right, so that's the learning outcome. And the last bit we will need to do as an educator is to do a follow-up. So by the reason we do the observation is to further support children's learning. So what activity you can plan to support this child to further develop the skills that you identify in the interpretations. So for example, the child, again, we do the child in the sandpit drawing circle. So there, he draw a lot of circles and then he says bubbles. That's what he says. So that's the end of your observations. It's bubbles. So then you keep drawing circles. So that means the child is using sand drawing to represent his idea and thoughts. So he wants to tell you about bubbles. So that's so it's about they're using communication skills because they're drawing. So that's a communication, telling you the idea about bubbles. So that's outcome 5. So how you actually, the follow-up can be, okay, what can I do to support this kid to further develop the communication skills? Because that's what you identify. So you can think, oh, maybe I can provide different materials, like, I can give the child some crayons or texture and paper to draw, then to represent more ideas. So explore different way to express idea. So the follow-up will be, we're going to set up a crayon drawing table for the child to further understand it, for the communication skills. So that's a follow-up. So one activity that support your observations, like to make the child to further develop their skills. Because our goal is always planning activity that is child-led. So based on the child's interest, what the child's doing, we plan something for the child. So then they can further develop their skills. So we are scaffolding them. Yeah, so that's a template, and that's quite easy to help you to understand. Okay, this is what I need to do. So it's 4 steps. Well, actually 5. So the information, observation, interpretation, early year learning framework outcomes, and follow up. Yes. Cool. So let's go back to the observations. I will open up the second. Let me see if I can stop the presentation, Jetin, and then I will share another presentation with you.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to share is writing an observation. So writing an observation, I have pretty much explained it. The purpose of the observation is to support their learning, and also what do we do during the observation. So that would be on during the observations. So we have done it during the observation. We just watch what the child's doing. Yes, it's very simple, very plain language, no fancy words. Describe what the child actually say and do, even though they say, Caesar, but the child says C. So that means you just need to write down C, not Caesar, because that's what the child say, and that's to demonstrate the understanding. So here, so let's go through the analyze the learning. So yeah, so I think I also mentioned about be mindful during observation, use the positive language and be factual. So write what you see and be relevant. So including detail and direct quotes, information, context of the observation. So quote what the children say, exactly what they say, and be objective. So know your personal interpretations. So then it's very factual, it's a fact. So then when we go through the analysis of the learning, which is the interpretations. So here in the presentation, I've given you some hints for you to do the writing. So that is the format usually is you use, the sentences you use is, it is evident that the child used send drawing to represent idea, its communication skills. So it helps you, this is the little sentence structure to help you to write your interpretation. And through the observation, blah, 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 this child, use drawing, send drawing to represent idea. And during the process of observation, the child is learning to draw circles, something like that. So drags, that is the child's name, has shown, blah, 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 exploring the early writing skills to demonstrate bubbles. So that is the sentence that can support you to write the interpretation. So then okay, so it's pretty much you don't need to write an essay for the interpretation, generally around 4 sentences. Then, the sentence can start with, it is evident, which is shown in the presentation, through the observation, during the process of observation, and the child's name has shown, blah, 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 blah. That helps you to start to interpret. So here is an example in the presentation of giving you how to analyze, interpret. Through these observations, it is evident that Grace engages in and contributes to shape play experience. So then you explain. Then Grace helped her friends stacking blocks side by side. And Grace has also shown that she recognized the contributions she makes to shape experience. Let's make a house. I like our house. So you do your interpretation, so what you think. So then you link it to the observation. So like what it says, Grace helped her friends with stacking blocks side by side. Then that is his share play experience, the share play. So he's playing with friends. That's a share play experience. That is your interpretation, but then you put it the why. Why do you think that share play experience? Because she helped her friends stacking the blocks side by side. Yeah, so the interpretation linked to the fact from your observation, then that's the interpretation. Yeah? Any question?
Not so far.
Great, awesome. So then again, after, as on the template, after the interpretation, you link to the 5 outcomes. So I'm not going to go through that again because we have been really explaining it. So the 5 outcomes, which outcome that link it to the observations. Yes?
Yes.
And then the follow-up. So when we're doing the follow-up, it's about the next step to think about how to support the child to further extend their learning or their skills. So, or further to develop their interest in a particular topic. So when, so they say, oh, I think the child can, the worms can swim. So then they explore, then you will think, oh, God, I think I need to extend something about worms. So then we extend the child's interest so they can develop that learning skills. Yes? Yeah. So here is an example. Jenny, would you like to read out the example of the follow-up?
Yeah, sure. So to follow up and extend upon Grace's above experience, we will support her interest by offering pattern blocks with pattern cards for her to follow. Learning outcome 4.2.2, create and use representation to organize, record and communicate mathematical ideas and concepts.
Yep, great. So when you're looking at the example, the follow-up and extend upon Grace above experience, we will support her interest by, so this is what you're going to do, offering pattern blocks with pattern cards for her to follow. So this is her learning, like previously that they was talking about recognizing the shared experience. So how they, so that is an experience, the educator improvement to further support her learning, you know, about maybe shapes or share play, how to play together. Then you also will link into the outcome, but this outcome generally will be the same outcome that you identify in your template. So that this session, the early year learning framework outcome. So Tintin, if you can see the outcome, that's about the extension, the follow-up is also linking to the outcome you identify, because it has to be the same, because that's a follow-up from the observations. Yes? Cool. All right, I think just before we start, I have also attached 2 copies of the observations examples to support you to better understanding. So we can have a look. The first one is very simple. It's called the social development, and Jettina, I'm just going to stop sharing the presentation and show you the observations.
Right.
Okay, so the first one, you can, while I'm getting the observation example for jetting, you can have a read. Actually, where are they? Just taking some time to show.
No problem.
Yeah. Oh, don't know why it doesn't show. Do you have your electronic copy with you, Jetting?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So let's look at the social development. I'm sorry, Jetting, I'm just not a savvy of tech, IT, so I apologize for that. And so let's go back to the presentation then. So the observation, as you can see, the date, observe, educators. Sometimes you do include the educators. So then, when the parents come to you, you can actually, the parents know who to approach to if that is a piece of very sensitive observations, like like if a child being very aggressive, there's some aggressive behavior observation. So then if you write down your name that you are the person to, did the observation, then the parents or even the center director can approach you that, hey, blah, 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 can you give me more information? That is a reference. So then the people know who to approach to. So then you usually in the observation, but it's not compulsory, you will attach photos that is giving you a more, like a visual clue. Like giving you, like everybody who hasn't actually witnessed the whole observation, they have an idea exactly how it happened and how the background setting looked like. So attach photos. I generally love to do photos, put photos in the observation. It just makes it a bit more interesting and not just test based and boring. So with photo, it's a bit more interesting, especially for parents to look at. So for photos here, and then again, the first session, observations. Again, do you remember what do we do for observations? How do
To be spectral, to be objective.
Great. Yep.
Fancy word.
Yep, that's correct. Well done, Jetty. So factual, very factual information, objective. No, your personal emotion involved in there, or I feel so sorry for him because he fall down. You don't, you know, no, it's all factual. It's just your personal feeling that doesn't really showcase the understanding. So you can read the observation at group time. We line up to go outside. We can stand next to me. Dylan says to one of his friends, "Stop pushing. It's hurting me." Dylan comment when being pushed from behind. "Stand still like me so we can go out and play," Dylan says to his peers. So that's exactly what it says, and the quotation of the children's conversations. Right? So that's very simple. So you don't need to write big essays again, like very 3 or 4 sentences. That's finished. Then I think these observations, so that the templates that I've given you is just an examples. You can always develop your own template, but this is the core sessions that we need to include. So, you know, observation, interpretation, but some of the educator will make it really fancy words, like this one, social milestone observed. So that's actually interpretations. So it's another word, but you can change the word as long as you include all the core sessions in the observation. So start developing friendships, so very basic. Become more aware of the people feelings. Like to dance and sing. Show understanding of good and bad behavior. So that is interpretation from what it says, from the observation, you know, hurting, that's feeling. And finding solutions to how to be, you know, for good and bad behavior. And, you know, and they're dancing and playing outside. So then down here, linking to the early year learning framework. So then it's not so clear. I think this one, they display all the outcomes and sub-outcomes, and you just tick it so you can see on this observation they actually tick the 3.1. And also one more tick, I believe, somewhere.
I think just one.
Oh, just the social. But yeah, that's right. It's about the social. Well done, Carissa. So just one tick. So you tick that and done. So the downfall, there's one thing about this observation is missing. Have you noticed? There's one section missing in this observation.
Interpretation, but outcomes.
They did tick the outcome.
Or follow-up.
Follow-up, that's right. So there's no follow-up in these observations. Which is very fundamental. So this is only a pure piece of assessing children's learning, not planning the program, not planning for the children. So it's purely just for you to see, but there's no interpretation. So the best thing is, and this is a new requirement in early childhood education, you have follow-up, especially in Good Start early learning setting. It has to have follow-up to follow the learning. So again, the second one, that's a second example that you can use. It's jotting. So this is very different than this one. So it's actually have 3 snapshots of the child's observations. Again, has photos, just making it very interesting. And if you have time, obviously you can make it very colorful too, but that's not compulsory because everyone has, you know, just not enough time. So don't worry about being fancy, but just make sure that it's professional writing. So again, the information of the child, then photos. So that what happened here is actually in 3 different times of the child. So one time is she picked up an animal, Matilda picked up the animal from the basket and lines them up on the table. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he got the bucket, so that's a quotation of the child, what the child says. And Matilda says, and she points and counts them one by one. And Julia walks over, "Can I play?" She asks. "No, I'm doing it," Matilda replies, and Julia walks off. So that's one scenario. Then the second one, so it's playing with another child, with Lachlan, and blah blah blah, doing with Play-Doh and get off the seats and go around and pick up the Play-Doh and sit back down. So the last one is playing outside with a group of children. So you can actually do this one. It's more time consuming, but there's nothing wrong with this. You actually showcase probably the same outcomes, but in different contexts. To giving you more information about the child's learning in that particular learning area. So this one, it's called the jotting. So you always use the first tense. So this is because that's actually what you see. So the observation that we looked at before, the social development, is actually the past tense because you rolled it out at the end, after. So that's 3 different type of observation. Jotting is a present tense. So you literally just jot down, then that's, that is your observation. So it's a present tense because what you're doing is straight away, you complete it straight away. So this one is actually the past tense. So you observe, you actually just observe, no writing. We finish our section 1 training, which has 2 topics. The first topic is the understanding early year learning frameworks. And the second topic is writing an observation as your pathway training. So the second session training for your pathway training is actually external. So you do have external learning training. So I will send the external training for you, which will be around 20 minutes to half an hour. So what in the training session, it has given you the sequence, what you need to do. So pretty much you have 2 presentations to look at. The first presentation is how about the early year learning framework. So how to further support your understanding of the early year learning framework. And the second one, online presentation, is the observations, how to write, giving you. So this presentation will be a little bit more different. It tells you a lot more, another 3 more observation styles that you can use for your observation when you go back with children. So look at it, because today we explore jotting and just simple past tense observation, but then there's another 3 type of observation that you can also use. This is for you to look at. So after you looked at watch all the presentation, you do have tasks to complete. So the tasks is also are also attached for you. That is 2 tasks. One is understanding the early year learning framework. The second one is writing the observations. So you need to complete the tasks to show me that you actually have completed your second sessions of trainings and email it to me. Okay, so you will have around 3 weeks to complete your second training sessions, and also complete the tasks attached to the second training. And then email it back to me by just before Christmas. That would be perfect, 25th of December. That's around 3 weeks time. Any questions about the second session training?
No.
Awesome, that's great. So before we finish, I would like to thank Jetty, your supervisor, to join in and also being so actively involved in the training too. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for organizing the time for us to complete the pathway training for your 2 employees.
You're welcome. That was great action. Thank you.
You're welcome. So Jetty, as a supervisor, if you think that your Carissa and Jenny have any further learning needs, please do contact me. Then we will further discuss any training for these your 2 employees. So then, yep, cool, not a problem. Thank you for joining in again. And just before we finish, I do have feedback forms for you to complete. If you can complete your feedback form, it's about how you feel about the training sessions, and also me as a trainer, anything that you think I'm doing great, anything you think I need to improve or need to further support you, please do write it down. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much, and contact me anytime if you have